we always talk about what is good communication. I think all of us, especially those listening, know what bad communication is like, right? It's the stuff that costs you time, effort. It's the stuff that costs just relationships. It's the stuff that drives you nuts because it seems like somebody's tone deaf. Good communication is so context dependent, right? You and I could talk in a certain way and we could have that locker room humor and people could think that's super inappropriate in one circumstance, or we could talk in a very buttoned up way, right? This could be a very formal podcast, question, answer. And it could hit the marks of good communication by some people's metrics, but it might not be very interesting to listen to, which is why we tend to, right. Within this, based on your drives, this adversity, significance, and achievement, what is good communication to you? Like, what does that tend to look like? And if you want a specific context, so it's not so meta, let's go in the context of, as a coach, and then talk to me about the context of what good communication is with your partner, if you don't mind. But how did you like to be coached? How did you like to be coached? And how do you think, was there anything that you think somebody else could have misinterpreted, but it was definitely something that you appreciated?
Definitely, I guess for as far as coaching, like how I like to be coached, a lot of athletes too, I feel like they're like this, like we like the criticism, like there's always something to improve. And like, I've had coaches that are always like, when I first came to Phoenix, actually with the coach that I was assigned to, like was always super, super positive. And after a while I was like I didn't trust him. Like, I was like, nah, come on. Like, I need something better to work with. Like the ultra positivity in some aspects, yes, but like me on the track right now, no. I'm not like, because I wasn't winning, like I wasn't good. So I was like, if it was all sunshine and rainbows, I wouldn't have to be here.
Sure. Right.
And even now, like, my work with my dad, and before I got on this call with you, I had like a pretty hard track workout. And the first part of it, he was like, that was pretty bad. And I'm like, yeah, the whole time it felt bad too.
So you like direct.
Yeah, I do. I like, and I know that this is too much for people because I've had this conversation. I like direct, like as soon as the information, like upfront, because people, for me at least, like I like to have at least enough time and like space to be able to like mull it over and do with the information as I will. Yeah. And it's only taken like life experiences and time to realize like not everybody communicates that way. Sometimes
so with that, when you say direct, what could be direct to me or somebody in Chile could be completely different in terms of directness to you. Can you give an example of like, and I know it's ad hoc, right? Like, yeah. But is it as simple as, Lacey, get your shit together. That was a subpar effort. Or is it something like, hey, Lacey, not going to lie, that was trash comparatively to what I know you're capable of. Try this instead. Is it those kinds of things? Is it less directed than that? Where is that on that scale?
No, I mean, it's like, I have this like on video too. I was doing an interview, but it was on the track. My dad is like walking past me. He's like, you're going to bullshit all day or are we going to get to work? Like, like this. So it's like, definitely like after that run, he was like, that was bad, and it wasn't like, the gentleness, like, in my personal relationships, like I might need a little bit more softness. But even when I first started working with my sport and performance psychology, Mark Strickland, he's in Phoenix, he's amazing. He was like upfront, like my first meeting with him, and I feel like you and I are similar. It's like, I can read the room, I can read people. So I usually get along really well with pretty much anybody I interact with. Very charming. And he and I lived in similar neighborhoods, and I came in, I'm like, oh, cute neighborhood. Like we're neighbors, blah, blah, blah. And like, he made sure up front, he's like, listen, we're not going to be friends. He's like, if I see you at a coffee shop, I'm not going to go out of my way to say hi to you. And that was, at first I was a little offended because I'm like, everybody likes me. But at the same time, like, I realized I was like, you know what? I like somebody up front who's like, this is the boundary. This is what we're working with. Like, no need for funny business. Like I'm funny business all day, but I do really, really well with people that are just straightforward, like not here to coddle you. We're here to get shit done. Like, and
yeah, I think
my preference.
I think, what's so interesting to me as we dove more and more into the coaching research, especially like as I pursue my doctorate, it was always odd to me where, all these years I've spent coaching, and the majority of athletes that I've worked with are very much like you. They like the directness. They like locker room humor. They know that there's tough love. Yet all the research continues to just espouse this whole transformational approach, right? Like lift them up, let them know you love them. And like you said, there can be a place for that. But I remember even wearing, Amazon has a device called the Halo. And no, I don't get paid for it or anything, but it'll code how you seem to come across, right? Through their technology. And I remember at the end of the day, it would give you a printout and it would say, because a lot of this coincided with the stuff that we do at our workshops, it would tell me that my most negative tone was, between 8 and 10 in the morning. And I had to think about that. And it was the time when I was coaching a few of these NFL guys that I'd worked with. And I remember one of them was always late. So I'd be almost like you said, I'd be like, Jack, you going to tie your shoes for a half hour? Are we going to
bullshit all day or what?
Right. And even though one of them had been in the NFL like 9 years, if he did one thing wrong, right, I'd bust their balls and I'd be like, dude, you look like a baby giraffe. Do you know how to move? Like, but then, I'd go over and kind of pat him on the back and be like, all right, now here's the real coaching. But those guys wouldn't have had it any other way. They wouldn't have had it any other way. And I know that it's especially interesting too. Like I know plenty of coaches that feel like, because this is still something, communication, one, isn't talked about a lot in coaching. I think it's talked a lot about in business leadership, but that's even worse in terms of this kind of warm, fuzzy thing. But another thing I know, and we have some clients that they don't know how to communicate to female athletes, especially in today's climate. And so does the way you like to be interacted with, does that change male, female coach? Is there something that you think male coaches could be better at doing to build buy-in? Like, is there any time, because it's a tough subject today. I think people are just scared to cross boundaries. They don't know what's what. And I think most people don't know how to communicate in general, let alone an adaptive athlete, a female, and somebody that's very confident and wants direct. What advice would you give somebody if they had to okay, you're coaching Lacey today, good luck? Yeah.
Well, I think so much of it's contextual. And I think just like you said, there's studies that have come out, and I was reading, a lot of, I've been doing just randomly, I've been assigned to do a lot of work on self-talk and resilience, which is my shtick now, even with my job. But, the athletes typically that you work with, and where I'm at now in my professional career as well, we can self-regulate. It's dealing with criticism is not going to make or break you. But I think in the beginning part of me, starting track, definitely would not be able that. It just that would have broke me, especially if it was somebody who I felt when I was working with the coaches in Phoenix, because I didn't know them really well. I know Dan Paff was our coach, and he people left because he was so mean, but I was used to that. I make jokes all the time that I'm my dad's female son. I was just kind of raised in that environment. But I've also been really lucky. I went to an all-girls high school and I've had female coaches, and I like having female coaches. I think females are sometimes we can be a little bit more cerebral, and there's a way, because I feel men are actually, ironically, I feel men sometimes are more emotional, but in a way that you have to be funny. It has to come off a certain way. And women can just be all right, that was not the time that we were aiming for. Try this, maybe this is your technique. So I think women we like more words. I feel men like less words, and they like bigger impact, less words. And I think women same amount of impact, more words. That's at least been my experience.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that's contextual, right? Because there's always inevitably somebody that's oh, there's no differences between, and it's I think people need to appreciate there are differences. And even if somebody doesn't believe that there are differences between identified genders or sexes, there are differences in terms of cultures. And it's not just culture of where you're at in the world, but think about that. You had to have one of the hardest discussions in your life at 9. Why would you not like direct communication, right? I would have to imagine that would have changed the way you personally interacted for the rest of your life. I would have to imagine, and again, we know each other, but not well enough that we've ever talked about this, but I would have to imagine that even if I was in a relationship with you, whether it's a coaching relationship or a romantic relationship, that you would value some level of direct, forthright, hey, let's cut to the head of this so we can move forward faster together than beating around the bush. I mean, am I correct with that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Anytime there's any questionable moment, even with my partner, with Josh, I'm just is something the matter? Can we just fix this right now? And that's but that was, and again, shout out to my mom. When I first got diagnosed, I know that my mom was definitely the leader of me being sick. And then my dad, it was a relay. My dad took all my recovery stuff and just helped me excel. But when I first was diagnosed, my mom had asked me, she was how much information, she's like, it's going to be really scary, but how much information do you want to know? And even at that age, I was like, you know, again, it's like kid math is so simple. I was like, well, it's my body. I guess I should know. Like, if it's happening to me, I would like to know the information. And again, it's like, who knows what's right or wrong, especially with parents. Like, no one comes out into adulthood without a little bit of damage, but you know, it's what keeps us exciting and funny.
Sure.
But it was something that they made sure to do. Like, I always knew exactly what was happening. And like, I don't know if that was the right or wrong thing, but that was just, it shaped me, and it shaped the way that I communicated, because again, it's like I talked about coming out of cancer land, like it's for so long, I feel like I just was running on those survival fumes. So I was just used to constantly just like, and my feedback, even with my coaches when I was in Phoenix, it was just like constantly like oversharing so much information. And just like, the older I've gotten and the more, I guess, like the more self-sustained that I am now, especially in track and field, like you don't have to just continually like overload information. Like now I know like what the important parts of information, so we can be as efficient as possible, but that comes with time. And I think it's the same thing too, talking about like coaching your styles, like if you can handle crass jokes, like, you know, annoying things or distracting comments, and then being able to refocus again, like that just takes time. And I think like the more you've reached levels of mastery in your craft, like things are they're less emotional. So you can make the side jokes, you can do the silly stuff because you know, like the task at hand. But like when you're first starting, a lot of it has to be like, come on, Lacey, you can do it, because you know, you're faking it. You're like, I'll figure it out, but go in with a positive attitude until you understand what it is you need to work on. And then it just changes, and it's constantly changing, and it should.